In the deep silence of night, the jungle does not sleep. It breathes, it waits. Beneath tangled branches and gauze-thinned mists, something ancient stirs, something not quite human and not entirely gone. The vines are too still. The wind whispers. Secrets in a language only the lost remember. Footsteps fall where no one walks. And every shadow, no matter how small, leans just a little too far toward you. This is not the jungle from childhood stories. This is the jungle where stories go to die, where time forgets itself, and the forest dreams your name. You are not alone here, but you might wish you were. Close your eyes, take a breath, and let the darkness lead you. Asterisk, asterisk, the air hung thick. A velvet weight upon the shoulders of the man who stepped quietly through the jungle's shadowed veil. His boots sank slightly into the wet loam, the scent of rich earth rising with every step. Behind him, the last gasp of civilization, his boat vanished down river, swallowed by the slow bend of black water and time. Ahead lay nothing but the forest, a cathedral of emeralds older than names. He came here for silence, for the illusion of solitude. But the jungle is never silent, and it never forgets you're there. The first thing he noticed was the breath. It came not from his own lungs, but from above high in the tangled canopy where branches stitched the sky into something permanent. The leaves moved in a rhythm not dictated by wind, but by pulse. Slow, deep, as though the trees themselves were inhaling, and then exhaling, a great, invisible diaphragm rising and falling with the throb of life so ancient it no longer cared to be subtle. The entire jungle was breathing, as if he had walked not into a forest, but into the chest cavity of something still alive. Something vast. The man paused, tilting his head upward. No birdsong, no insects. Only the steady, soundless respiration of foliage, like lungs made of leaves. He pitched his tent near a moss-covered stone, not out of logic, but instinct. There was a sense of being watched that never quite settled, and the stone felt oddly anchored, as though the forest gave it permission to exist. The sun sank faster than expected. Here under the canopy, twilight bled in early. The trees consumed the light with greedy fingers. One moment golden haze, then blue dusk, then black. The man lit a small fire, its flickering glow swallowed almost immediately by the encroaching green. The trees didn't like fire. They leaned away as if flinching. But he needed warmth, needed something human to hold the dark at bay. He didn't hear the whisper the first time. It came like a breath on the back of his neck. Not a voice, not words, but suggestion. The kind of sound you remember hearing only after it's gone. He turned, nothing. Still the sensation lingered. That someone, or something, had leaned close to his ear and said his name. But how would it know his name? His fingers trembled slightly as he spooned cold stew from a tin. It tasted of iron and absence. Somewhere in the distance, a branch cracked. Not snapped, cracked, like a joint bending the wrong way. Still nothing. Sleep was a negotiation. He drifted in and out, the forest speaking in dreams, just below his threshold. Laughter made of leaves. A woman's hum. Footsteps that circled the tent but never pressed the grass. Then came the breath again. He sat bolt upright. The air inside. The tent shifted, as though something vast had exhaled just outside the thin nylon wall. It rustled the flap. It warmed the space. It smelled old, Not rotten, not sulphurous, but old. The way basements smell in forgotten homes. The way dust smells when it remembers a face. And then the whispers began again, this time unmistakable. They didn't speak words, not at first, just syllables formed from wind and memory, like an old radio signal caught on a frayed wire, whispering through the leaves, then dash clearer, a name, his name, not screamed, not groaned, whispered lovingly. He scrambled outside, flashlight cutting swaths through the black. Nothing, only trees, moss, fog, clinging to low branches like cobwebs. But the canopy above swayed, not all of it, just one section, directly. Above his camp, the trees seemed to breathe deeper. The leaves shimmered like the skin of a sleeping animal stirred by dreams. Something was awake, and it was watching. The next morning came slowly. Sunlight crept through like a guilty thing, reluctant to touch what the night had cloaked. The man's fire had died. The stone he camped beside was warm to the touch. Strange. The air was cool. He packed quickly, too quickly. The sense of eyes had never left him. It burrowed beneath his skin, clung to his breath, followed the beat of his heart. Still, curiosity pressed him deeper. That's the thing about the jungle. It calls not with noise, but with absence. With a feeling you can't place a hum in your bones. The man should have turned back, but he did and single quotes t. instead. He walked toward where the leaves had breathed. He found it by accident, a tree older than any he'd seen, wrapped in vines as thick as his arm. The bark was carved, not naturally, but deliberately, with grooves, not glyphs, a pattern that spiraled upward like a slow-motion scream, and at the base, a whole dot, not a burrow, not an animal's den, an opening circular to perfect, like a mouth. He crouched, reached for his flashlight, shone it inside. No eyes stared back, no sound echoed, just a tunnel of roots, moist earth, and something else. Something breathing. The air within pulsed. A rhythm, inhale, exhale. It matched his own. Suddenly, it didn't feel like he was breathing. It felt like it was breathing him. He staggered back. The earth around the tree trembled not violently, but like something deep below had shifted position in its sleep. Later that night, he tried to write in his journal. But the pen moved differently. Words came unbidden, in handwriting not quite his. We remember. You woke us. Come deeper. He dropped the journal, stepped away, but the tent flap lifted on its own gently, as if the jungle had inhaled once more. Drawing in the night. He didn't sleep, not fully. Each time, his eyes drifted closed. The breath returned, right beside him, then from inside him, until he could no longer tell where his breath ended and the forests began. And just before dawn, the tree was gone. Not moved, not fallen, gone where it had stood. Only a circle of blackened earth remained, pulsing softly, like something had risen and walked away. He didn't remember falling asleep, only the sensation of being watched, not by eyes, but by presence. The kind of gaze that doesn't see you, but feels through you, as if you were nothing more than fog taking shape for a while. Temporary. Borrowed. When he opened his eyes, the tent was filled with gold. But the light was wrong. The sun should have been rising from the east, but the glow came from the west. And it wasn't bright, it pulsed, as though it had traveled a long, tired distance to reach him. He unzipped the flap and stepped barefoot onto the mossy floor of the jungle, and found the trees had moved. The stone he had camped beside, gone. The trail he came in on, erased. The trees stood silent and strange, slightly too close together now, their trunks forming a gentle ring around the clearing. He wasn't sure if it was illusion, or if they had truly stepped inward while he slept. He turned in place. Slowly, carefully, the jungle was no longer welcoming, it was observing. He whispered a name to himself, his own, just to anchor reality. But the sound felt stolen, as though the air had eaten the word before it left his lips. From somewhere deep among the trees came a slow knock, 3 soft thuds, like knuckles against hollow bark. Then silence. He took a tentative step toward it. Then another. The moss gave under his feet with a sound like breath being held. Vines shifted, curling along branches, moving with the slight tremor of awareness, as if the entire jungle was adjusting its gaze. The light continued to pulse. Not from the sun, but from something behind the trees. He followed it. He didn't mean to. His feet simply moved. Around a fallen log, beneath a natural arch formed by tangled roots. Past a stone figure eroded beyond recognition, except for 2 deep sockets where eyes might have been. Then he found it. A small grove, circular, impossibly symmetrical, where the canopy opened to a single beam of honeyed light. In its center stood a tree unlike any other. It looked burned, but not charred, blackened, polished glass-like. Its bark shimmered almost wet, and its branches grew upward in sharp, unnatural forks, not like trees seeking light, but like antlers. Reaching, listening, beneath it, another opening in the earth. Not the same one as before. This one breathed louder. He knelt, not out of reverence, but compulsion. The opening was rimmed in something pale and brittle, not bone, but close. The smell that emerged was both ancient and intimate, like the breath of something that had spoken your name in dreams. Long before you were born. The forest was quiet, but the hole was not inside. He heard a heartbeat, not his own. He reached out, hand trembling. The edge was warm, as though it had been waiting. Then something stirred within, not seen, not heard. Felt the way thunder is felt before it cracks. He fell backward, breath stolen. The pulse inside the earth grew louder, matched again to his own. Boom boom boom. Boom boom. The canopy above began to sway, but there was no wind, just rhythm. The breath of a slumbering giant, inhaling through roots and exhaling through leaves. And then, from far behind him, a whisper. Close in his ear. You should not have come. He spun around, but no one stood there. Only jungle, only green, only green, only breath. He tried to run. His boots caught on roots. Branches clung to his arms like hands. The forest did not want him to leave. Not yet. Somewhere a voice hummed, a low, almost maternal lullaby. No words, just tone, sorrowful and sweet. The sound came from above, from the canopy. He looked up and saw it. A face, not fully formed, not flesh, made of leaves and shadows and suggestion. 2 dark hollows for eyes. A mouth that didn't move, but somehow smiled. It blinked, and the leaves rustled in time. He ran, branches clawed at his jacket. Roots snatched at his ankles, but he moved fast, too fast, until he stumbled into a space where the light shifted again, and just like that, he was back at camp. His tent stood exactly where he left it. The stone was there again, resting silently beside it. His journal open, waiting. But something had changed. The trees were still breathing, that hadn't stopped. But now, the breath was inside him. He could feel it with every inhale. And when he exhaled, the forest exhaled with him. He was no longer alone in his own body that night. He sat beside the fire again, but did not light it. He listened. The jungle didn't speak in words, it remembered in feelings, and what it remembered was him. The morning mist lay thick over the earth, curling low like spilled milk across moss and stone. Light filtered through the leaves in shards, not beams, as though the sun itself had been broken on the canopy above. Every tree stood in silence, tall and grave, like witnesses who had already decided not to speak. He stood at the edge of the clearing, one foot still inside what he knew, and the other poised above what he didn't. There had been a trail. He remembered it clearly. The line through the undergrowth, winding from the river deeper into the forest. Marked, mapped, counted, but now, it was gone. Where the earth had once been packed and trodden, it now pulsed with new life. Soft moss, newly grown ferns, vines that twisted like lazy serpents across the ground. Not trampled, not covered, erased like the forest had exhaled and smoothed it over with one long breath. He turned in slow, widening circles, tried to find signs, a snapped twig, a broken stem, the deep imprint of his boots. But there was nothing. No evidence he had ever passed through here. No past, no future, only now. And now was moving. Somewhere behind him, a single branch snapped. Not loudly, deliberately. He didn't turn toward it. He didn't move at all. Just listened, silence. Then a whisper, soft as the sound of silk being pulled through leaves. A rustle without a source. The kind of sound that carries weight, even though you can't say why. He turned slowly. The forest blinked. That was the only word he could find for it. One moment, the trees stood in their proper places, ordered distant. The next, they had shifted just slightly, like people caught moving in a still photograph. The space between them tighter, the angles off, the shadows deeper. He took a breath, and when he opened his eyes, the trail was there again, exactly as he remembered it, as if it had never left. But he had the distinct, unmistakable sense that it hadn't returned. He had been allowed to see it. With hesitant steps, he followed it, but slower now, watching the path wound forward, but nothing along it felt. The same dot colors seemed sharper in places, duller in others. A tree he was certain had been covered in vines yesterday was now bare. A fallen log that had been dry now glistened with fresh sap. And then there was the light dot. It no longer came from a single source. Instead, it glowed from within the jungle itself. A moss-covered stump shimmered faintly like bioluminescence. Ferns curled toward his feet as if drawn by heat. The entire trail pulsed with a rhythm that was not natural, not random. It beat like a heart, and as he walked, he felt his own heartbeat start to sync with it. Slower, slower, until his chest rose and fell in perfect time with the pulse beneath his boots. A clearing opened ahead. At its center, a stone totem, 5 feet tall, worn smooth by age and rain. It bore no face, no figures, only a spiral, carved in deep, perfect grooves. The spiral turned inward, always inward. A visual whisper, beckoning the eye deeper and deeper into its center, and at the base of the totem were his boot prints from yesterday. Deep, distinct, but pointing the wrong way. He hadn't come from this direction. The prints showed someone walking away from the path toward the totem, not returning to it, which meant someone or something had placed them here. Or worse, he had been walking in circles, yet everything looked new. No sign of repetition. The trail continued beyond the totem, winding into a tighter bend than before, and far off, just at the edge of hearing, came a new sound. Tick, tick, tick. Faint, mechanical, like a clock, buried in the dirt. Each tick was too slow, too deliberate. The kind of sound that made time feel uneven, stretched. He followed it as he walked. The jungle narrowed. Trees leaned inward. The sky above grew dim. The air thickened like water just before it boils. Then the trail split. It hadn't split before. Two paths, identical, no markers. No direction. Only the soft tick. Tick, tick, continuing down both. He stood between them, paralyzed by choice. Then a flicker. A shadow moved to the left, not across the trail, but into it, like someone stepping into a painting. He turned quickly, catching the last curve of motion. A figure, not human, not animal, slipping into the trees. It didn't run, it glided. He followed, not out of courage, but magnetism. The kind of pull you feel in dreams when your feet move without your consent. Each step forward made the path stranger. Bird calls began to echo, but played in reverse, like tape winding backward. The trees no longer looked like trees. Their bark warped into subtle ridges, like faces turned to scream, but frozen in stillness. He kept walking. His flashlight flickered. When it returned, the path had changed again. The ground was covered in a thin white dust, not sand, not ash. Salt, and lining the edges of the trail were small bones arranged clean, purposeful, like breadcrumbs left by something that had never been hungry, just curious. The totem appeared again, same height, same spiral, but now the grooves were deeper. The spiral moved when he stared. Too long, he blinked. His own footprints led to it again. Still backward, still wrong, still fresh. He turned around, and the trail was gone. The jungle behind him had shifted, twisted. Every tree turned slightly inward, as if their trunks had leaned to whisper to each other behind his back. The forest had looped him, no matter which way he faced. The trail ran forward, and yet, he knew he would end up here again, back at the totem, back where the spiral waited. He sat down on a nearby stone, breathing slowly, hands pressed against his temples, trying to feel for something real. His heartbeat, his breath, his name, from beneath the stone. A voice, not loud, not deep. A child's whisper, "You're almost here." He staggered back. The spiral totem pulsed once, not with light, with thought, a silent message that pressed against his skull. Not all trails lead away. Some lead back to the place that made you. And in that moment, the man understood something simple and terrifying. He was not following a trail. The trail was following him. There are places in the jungle where light forgets how to reach, where roots swell from the earth like ribs, beneath taut green skin, gnarled and ancient, curling over stones and skulls and secrets, places where the ground itself has memory and dreams. The man stood at the edge of one such place. Now, He hadn't meant to arrive here, but the jungle never asks what you mean to do. It only listens to where your footsteps want to go. He had left the spiral totem behind him hours ago, or what he believed were hours. Time in this place moved like mist, circling, curling, never quite letting go. The light never truly changed, and his watch ticked with a rhythm that no longer matched his pulse. And now here he was, a hollow in the earth, half swallowed by vines and low-hanging limbs. Roots spidered from above, thick and wet, weaving across the mouth of the cave like fingers curling into a fist. The darkness beyond was not empty. It was aware. He crouched at the edge, a breath of air, cold and stale, pushed gently from the opening, not wind, not pressure. Exhale as if something deep below had noticed him and welcomed him in. He turned on his flashlight. The beam flickered once, then steadied, though weaker than usual. Its glow swallowed almost instantly by the walls. The descent was not far, but it felt eternal. The tunnel curved downward, the roots pressing close. Some pulsed faintly with sap. Others felt hollow, like veins long since drained. And still he walked. His boots touched dry soil, then soft moss, then stone dot, then something else. He stopped. The light revealed the floor beneath him was layered with carvings, symbols, circles, eyes, always eyes, wide and unblinking, etched into stone and wood and bone. They covered the walls, the floor, the ceiling above. Some were neat and symmetrical. Others were jagged, clawed, gouged, and between them all, faint traces of red pigment, long dried, long faded. He bent down, brushing a fingertip along one of the eyes. It was still warm, behind him. A sound, not footsteps. Breath inhaled, held, exhaled. He turned slowly. Nothing, only walls lined with staring eyes. And yet, he could feel it now. From below, a presence. Not rushing up to meet him, but waiting. The passage narrowed again, forcing him to duck. The roots here had changed. Less tangled now, more deliberate. Arranged like rib cages along either side, as if he were walking down the throat of a great beast. The ground sloped again, and soon the tunnel opened into a chamber. Circular, silent. Still the walls were slick with dark moss. And overhead a cluster of roots dangled like wet hair from the ceiling. In the center of the chamber, embedded in the floor, was a pool, small, round, still as glass. He approached. The water was black, not dark black, reflective, but wrong. His face in the pool stared back, without blinking, without breathing. As if the water had remembered what he looked like, and simply held on to it. He knelt beside the edge, staring into that unmoving surface. And then very faintly, the ripples began, not from wind, not from movement, from beneath. The image of his face trembled. Then another face emerged behind it. Not a stranger's, his own again, but older, worn eyes hollow, mouth stitched shut with shadow. And then that second version of him opened its eyes. He gasped and fell backward. The chamber pulsed once, a low throb in the stone, like the sound of a massive heartbeat heard from far away. The roots above trembled. From the pool, a whisper. "You've been here before." He froze. The voice was soft, feminine, ageless. It came not from above, not from around, but from within the water. "I haven't," he said out loud, unsure to whom the pool disagreed. Memories? Not his own, pressed into his skull like dreams forced through a keyhole. A boy. Years ago, following a song into the trees. A woman, eyes painted black, dancing around a spiral of stones. A man, hands shaking, digging into roots that bled. Red, and another, who looked just like him. Kneeling here, listening. The jungle had seen them all, had kept them all. He backed away slowly, the chamber now colder, the breath behind him thicker. But before he could turn to flee, the voice spoke again. Don't leave yet, they're watching. And then he heard them. Not whispers, not footsteps, breath all around, dozens of quiet inhales. He spun around and saw them. The eyes, not the carvings, real eyes, peering out from between the roots along the wall, wet, unblinking, faintly glowing with reflected light. They watched in silence, dozens, no, hundreds, some wide with curiosity. Others narrowed in warning. He could not move. His flashlight flickered, then a motion from the far side of the pool. A shape emerged, tall, impossibly thin, its outline more suggestion than body. Like a shadow stitched to the wall, stepping forward without sound. It had no face, only a flat plane of skin where features should be, but its head tilted. And where no mouth should be, he felt the smile. It pointed toward the pool, then toward him, then it stepped backward, and vanished into the root wall like breath into mist. He stood paralyzed, heart beating fast, breath loud in his ears. The voice in the pool whispered once more, "You're not here to escape. You're here to remember." He didn't answer. He turned and fled, back up the tunnel. The roots tried to stop him, reached, clung, slid against his legs and arms like pleading fingers. But he tore free, scrambled through the narrowing throat of the earth, burst into the green light above, and there, in the clearing, the trees stood still, watching. The air was silent again, but not empty. Beneath his feet, the roots pulsed, not angry, not afraid, patient. He sat for hours beside the mouth of the cave, unable to speak, unable to move. Only one thought burned in his mind, circling like a moth. The forest does not show you things to frighten you. It shows you what it's already taken. The jungle, for all its breath and body, was never silent. But there were places where its sounds thinned, where even the insects held their breath, and the trees grew still in quiet reverence. He found one such place by following what he thought was birdsong, only it wasn single quotes. It was music, faint, distant, carried on the breeze like a lullaby remembered in a dream. The notes curved and dipped as if played on strings of running water. Each one strange, but achingly familiar, like something you'd once known long ago and only now recalled. He followed it through brush and vine, deeper into the places the maps refused to name. The canopy overhead thinned, not fully, just enough to let soft blue light trickle down like mist through a colander. And there, in a shallow hollow between two sloping hills, he found the river. It did not rush, it did not churn, it moved slow, black mirror smooth. The kind of stillness that doesn't just reflect, it remembers. The banks were lined with stone, not laid by hand, but settled, as if the river had been there long before the jungle had grown around it. Vines dangled overhead, some trailing the water's surface with lazy devotion. The air was cool here, touched with a scent like old coins and wet leaves. He knelt at the edge, stared down, and the river stared back. Not just his face, but 1,000 others. They surfaced for only moments at a time, glancing appearances. In the reflection, then sank again. A woman brushing hair that wasn't hers. A man whispering with no lips. A child with no eyes, reaching upward from below the surface. He blinked. Only his own face remained, but the current tugged at his senses. Not physically, but emotionally. He could feel the river pulling on his memory, unspooling pieces of thought. Like threads from a worn-out sleeve, he dipped a hand into the water. It was warm, soft. But the moment his skin touched it, something shifted. A sound bloomed in his ears. Not a splash, not a ripple. A voice faint whispered. I waited. He froze. The river stirred. Barely. Then another voice, layered with the first. Don't forget me. Then more. A symphony of longing, gentle, broken, intimate. Each whisper overlapping the next. Men, women, children, all speaking not to him but through him. Their thoughts, pressing gently against his bones like a slow tide rising within the body. He stumbled back, sat in the moss, breathing hard. But the river didn't stop. It continued to sing, a quiet lament of names and memories, dreams half-formed and undone. He covered his ears. Still it came. Not louder, just closer. Like the water was inside him now, winding through his mind as it did through the jungle, filling the empty spaces. And then the song changed his name, spoken clearly, softly repeated twice. A woman's voice, not young, not old, familiar, but impossible. His mother had died years ago. He had scattered her ashes in a bay, hundreds of miles from here, and yet the voice from the river said her name, his name, and wept. He crawled forward, staring into the water again, and saw her, not clearly, not her face, but her outline, the tilt of her shoulders, the way she held her hands, a shape of someone loved, carved into moving water. Mom, he whispered. The figure turned to him, smiled, then opened her mouth to speak. But what came out was his own voice, screaming. He reeled back. The river snapped into motion, fast and alive, though it made no sound. The water moved with impossible speed, swirling with white streaks like lightning under glass. Within it, shapes, figures, dozens, hundreds. Some half-formed, others staring. Others still, drowning without drowning, their mouths open in silent plea. Then, silence. The river stilled, returned to its former state. The lullaby began again. A different song now. Lower, mournful. The man backed away, standing. The jungle behind him had grown darker. The sky above dimmer. And though the water was quiet again, he felt something stay with him. The river had shown him sorrow, but it had kept something, too. He opened his backpack. His journal was gone in its place, a piece of paper he didn't write. Stained. Torn on it a message. Return what you took. He stared at the river, then down at his own hands. They felt heavier, wetter, but there was no blood, only the sound of the jungle exhaling, only the voice in the current whispering. You forgot her, you left us there, come closer. He took one step back. The trees closed slightly. Behind him, not to trap, to guide. Because once you've touched the river that remembers, it does not release you. You carry it. It watches through your eyes now, and every tear you cry will flow back to it. Somewhere in the lowlands, where the air sinks heavy and the jungle grows denser with every breath, there stands a tree older than memory. He found it not by map, nor instinct, but by silence. A pocket of soundless air, tucked between ridges and mist, where even the river refused to flow. The ground sloped inward, toward it, like the land was bowing, or recoiling, and there it was, alone, still massive. Its trunk wide as a house, bark the color of dried ash and split charcoal. The branches stretched like black arms into the thick canopy, touching no other tree. The roots curled outward in a tangled mass, forming a circle bare of all other growth. No grass, no moss, not even insects dared crawl across its base. He stood at the edge of that ring. Even before he saw the red, he felt it grief. It didn't hang in the air like threat or fear. It pressed, gently but firmly, like a hand on the chest, a sorrow that didn't want to hurt, only to be understood. He stepped inside the ring. The sound around him vanished. No birds, no breath, just the faint, slow drip, drip. Drip of sap falling to the roots. It looked like blood, thick, dark, and wet. It flowed from cracks in the bark, not running freely, but leaking slowly, like tears from something long forgotten how to cry. He approached, laid a hand gently on the bark. It was warm, not damp, not sticky. Warm, like a body. And then, it pulsed, just once. A soft throb beneath the surface, as if the tree had a heartbeat. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't run. The blood sap continued to fall, and in it, reflections, not of his face, of others, dozens. Their images appeared. For only seconds, in the sheen of the sap, flickers of grief-struck eyes. Hands reaching upward, mouths frozen mid-prayer. He stepped back, and that's when he heard it. A whisper, from the base of the trunk. Not words. Not languid, a plea. He knelt there, nestled in the tangled roots. Was an opening. Small, narrow, too low to be a passage, too shaped to be natural. A burrow of some kind, but not made by animals. Inside, darkness and a whisper. He leaned closer. The breath from within was cold. Then words, not again. He froze. Don't dig. He pulled back quickly, heart thudding, but the voice had already settled into him, not like a sound, like a memory. He looked down and saw the earth. Beneath the roots was disturbed, loosened, once dug, once filled. The soil spoke in silence. Something had been buried. Here he didn't want to dig, but his hands moved, anyway. Fingers into earth. Cold, damp, heavy. Each scoop unearthed a little more sorrow. The smell rose, not rot, but sadness. A scent like dust from an old room, the kind left untouched after someone is gone. Not cleaned, not visited, just paused. He reached something hard. Not stone, not wood, bone, small, delicate. A child's. He stopped. His hands trembled. The tree groaned above him, low, pained. Then the bark directly in front of him split. Not deeply, just enough to reveal a single, ancient eye, not human, not animal. Just awake. It blinked, and the tree spoke without speaking. You weren't supposed to see this. He backed away, knees scraping across the soil. The hole closed. The sap thickened. The eye vanished. But the sorrow did not. He sat at the edge of the clearing, just outside the circle of roots. For hours listening, the jungle did not speak. The air did not move. Only the slow, endless drip, drip of a grief too old to name. At some point, he opened his pack and found a leaf inside, too large to have drifted in. Laid there deliberately on it. In the faintest smear of blood, she asked us to keep her safe. We did. The wind stirred then, just slightly, brushing his cheek like the touch of a hand no longer living. He looked up. The branches swayed in rhythm with his breath, and from far above, he heard a lullaby, not with ears, with memory, the kind sung to children before the dark, the kind forgotten too soon, the kind trees. Remembered he stood, left the clearing slowly, didn't look back. Some grief doesn't want release, it only wants to be witnessed. It began with a heartbeat, or something like it. Not his own, but external, distant, yet familiar. A soft thudding in the air, steady as breath, slow as thought. It came from no direction and every direction at once, moving through the trees, like an echo that forgot where it started. At first he thought it was his imagination. After all, the jungle made sounds. Insects, birds, falling rain. But this wasn't any of those. This was deliberate. A low, rhythmic thoom, and thoom like hands against stretched skin. Rising and falling like breath within bone. He paused, mid-step. The sound faded, but the moment he started walking again, there it was. Softer now, as if the jungle were listening. He stopped once. More, testing its silence. Then a whisper of vibration across his chest, not heard, but felt. He turned in a slow circle, scanning the trees. Nothing moved, but the sound resumed faint. Persistent, he followed, not because he meant to, but because the sound did not give him a choice. Every time he tried to move away, the jungle thickened. Branches grew denser, undergrowth more tangled, but walking toward the thudding brought open space. A strange kind of ease in the trail, as though the forest wanted him to come closer, and so he did, hour by hour. The drums grew clearer. They weren't loud, they never were, but they were constant. A rhythm carved into the air itself, like the forest had a pulse, and he was being pulled toward its heart as the sun slipped behind the canopy. Shadows lengthened, and the jungle began to change again. The trees stood taller here, more symmetrical, not grown, placed. Their bark bore faint notches, not damage, but markings. Symbols half hidden by moss, spirals, eyes, crescent moons, and hollow circles. Not language, not entirely, but message. He couldn't read them, not with his mind, but his body understood. They were warnings not to stay away, but to listen closely. He pressed deeper into the trees, and soon the trail opened into a new space. Wide, circular, sunless. The trees here formed a perfect ring, their trunks wrapped in old cloth, now faded and torn by wind and time. And at the center, stones, 20 or more each, the height of his knee, arranged in a spiral. Each stone was hollow at its top, forming a shallow bowl. He approached inside one of the bowls. Blood, still fresh. In another, a single tooth, polished smooth. Another, nothing but ash. Each vessel carried a memory, a sacrifice. He stepped carefully. Between them, and in the center of the spiral, stood a large drum. Its surface was stretched hide, bound with vine and bone. The base was carved from a single slab of dark wood, etched with the same spirals and crescents. The hide shimmered faintly. In the dim light, no one stood near it, and yet it beat, soft, steady, thoom. Thoom thoom. He stared at it, waiting for movement. But the surface did not tremble. The vines did not shift. Still, the sound continued. He circled it once. Twice the jungle breathed with it. Then he saw them, beyond the trees. Figures. Not clothes. Not defined, just silhouettes, among the trunks. Too many to count. They didn't move, but they watched. And with every beat of the drum, they shifted slightly. Not stepping, tilting as though swaying to a rhythm that belonged to them alone. He turned back to the drum. Then something strange happened. The beat changed, just slightly. Slower now, deeper and familiar, he realized, with a slow, creeping chill. It was beating to the rhythm of his own heart. Thoom. He placed a hand to his chest. Thoom. Exactly in time. Then it quickened. So did his. He backed away. The drum followed, not physically, but the sound it echoed in his head. His chest, his bones. Faster, louder. Thoom dash. Thoom dash. Thoom dash. Thoom dash. He fell to his knees. Breath stuttering. Then dash silence. Sudden crushing. The kind of silence that makes you realize the sound had become part of you. He knelt in that stillness, dizzy, waiting. Then he felt it. A hand on his shoulder. He turned. No one. But the pressure remained. And then the whisper came. From within the drum. You've heard them before. He tried to answer, but no voice came. The message continued, not spoken, but pressed directly into his thoughts. They beat for the forgotten. They beat for those lost in the trees. Each drum a name. Each name a shadow. You're among them now. The jungle trembled. The figures at the tree line tilted, farther forward. Still no faces. Still no steps. But closer. He looked back to the spiral of stones. Every bowl was now full. Blood, teeth, ash, hair, bark. And in the center of the spiral, where the drum had stood, only a hole. Dark. Circular. Wet. The jungle pulsed. His breath grew shallow, and from the trees, the figures finally moved. One step, two. They didn't walk, they floated. Feet, never touching ground, each in time with the beat that had gone silent, but he still heard it in his own chest, in his skull. Thoo. He turned and ran. The jungle did not stop him. Branches bent out of his way, roots retracted. He stumbled through the brush, through vines, through ghostlight and shadow, until the drumming faded. But the rhythm did not. It stayed with him. Even now, even here, his heart would not slow, because the drums, they never really stop. They just change where they live. The jungle broke open without warning. One moment, he was fighting through thick brush, ducking branches that arched like claws. The next, the trees thinned and the world widened. At first he thought it was a clearing, but it wasn't. It was a village. Or the memory of one. The ground flattened beneath his boots. No longer moss, but packed earth, overgrown with soft vines. Narrow footpaths snaked between the remains of structures too ruined to name. Shapes that might once have been walls. Fragments of posts and beams, swallowed slowly by ivy and shadow. Stone altars toppled in the dust. Clay bowls cracked open, like old skulls. The entire place smelled of rain, and forgetting, and stillness. He stepped forward slowly. Not even birds sang here. The silence wasn't natural, it was protective. as if the village had pulled a blanket of hush over itself. A last gesture of dignity before dissolving into the green. He passed through what had once been a gate, 2 vertical stones marking an entrance, each carved with faded spirals, their grooves filled with black moss. Beyond them, silence, and then a sound, not loud, just a whisper of motion. Fabric brushing against skin. He turned. A figure stood in the distance, still watching, cloaked in pale linen, face half hidden in shadow. He blinked. The figure was gone. He looked around, nothing. The air was heavier here. Not with heat, but with memory. He passed what looked like a fire pit. Stones laid in a perfect circle, blackened long ago. Around it, small carvings lined the ground. Dolls made of twine and bone, their faces painted with lines that curled into weeping eyes. He bent to examine one, and felt something pass through him, not wind, not breath. Time. Like the air had blinked, and for a second, he was no longer alone. Voices filled the air, laughter, singing, children playing, then screams, then silence again. The jungle had snapped back like elastic. But for that moment, he had seen them. Not with his eyes, with memory. Not his memory. The village had offered him a taste. He stood ahead. A house still stood, mostly intact. Its roof was thatched, sagging but whole. Its doorway framed by 2 branches tied with faded ribbon. The door itself was gone. He stepped inside. The air within was cooler, not chilled. Preserved dust motes hung frozen in shafts of light that somehow slipped through the walls. An old mat lay in the corner, bowls on a low table, a rusted knife, a set of footprints across the dirt floor, small, bare, but fresh. He followed them. They led to the far wall, where an old tapestry still clung, hanging crooked, its thread brittle with age. It depicted a forest, a spiral, a tree with eyes, and beneath it all, a village wrapped in fire. He reached toward it, and the moment his fingers touched the fabric, the house vanished. Not exploded, not collapsed, just gone. And he was standing in the jungle again, but not the same jungle. The trees here were younger, the light clearer. The village was behind him now, whole, alive. Smoke curled from chimneys, people walked between huts. A child ran past him, giggling, weaving between his legs as if he weren't even there. He turned, more children, women fetching water, a man hammering a drum. No one looked at him, no one saw him, and then the sky darkened. Not with clouds, with birds, thousands, black, wings tearing across the sky like smoke-given feathers. The people didn't notice at first, but slowly, heads turned. The drumming stopped. The air shifted, and the birds began to fall. Not dive, fall, dead, before they hit the ground. Raining from the sky like black leaves. 1, then 10, then hundreds. Splatting against roofs, crashing into bowls, landing with sickening thuds in the dust. A silence spread, and in that silence, the trees moved, not just swayed. Stepped. He could feel it in the earth. A low, groaning shift, like roots pulling free and sliding across soil. Then the screams began. He covered his ears, fell to the ground, tried to wake up, but he wasn't dreaming. The vision lasted seconds more, then vanished. He lay back in the ruins once again. Same house, same dust, same silence. But now, in the center of the room, lay a single black feather, fresh, still warm. He picked it up, turned it over, on the underside written in fine ink, "We fed time to the trees, and now the trees feed on us." He left the house. The village remained unchanged, but now the air was heavier, each breath harder, as if the place were sinking, moment by moment, into its own past. And as he walked toward the exit, he noticed something else. The footprints he had followed earlier. They were his, circling back toward the house, not old, fresh and still forming behind him. The village was watching, and it remembered, because this was not a place time had abandoned. It was a place that had eaten time, and now it wanted more. The fog rolled in without warning. It crept low at first, like a pale animal stalking the earth, hugging the roots and weaving through underbrush. Then it thickened, not in waves, but all at once, as though someone had pulled a shroud over. The forest, within minutes, everything changed. The green of the jungle vanished. The sky disappeared. Even the trees became silhouettes, vague and skeletal, their branches reaching through the mist like pleading arms. He stopped walking, listened, but the silence in this fog was different. Not quiet, muffled. Every sound arrived, muted, blurred, as if echoing from beneath deep water. He could still hear his own breath, and something else, footsteps, not his, soft, measured, somewhere ahead. He called out a quiet, uncertain greeting, but the fog swallowed his voice before it could travel. Still, the footsteps came, not closer, not farther, just steady, pacing. He moved toward them, careful with each step. The ground beneath him had grown soft, almost spongy. The roots felt slick beneath his boots, and the vines overhead sagged with dew. Then a light dot, faint dot, golden dot, not flickering like fire, still and gentle. Like a lantern held far away, it bobbed slowly, side to side, hovering in the distance like a firefly, trapped in amber. He paused. Another light appeared, then another, soon a dozen, all at different distances, different heights. Some moved, some remained, perfectly still. None made a sound. He followed the closest one as he walked. The fog thickened further, until he could no longer see his own hands unless he held them in front of his face. The air was damp, cool, and faintly sweet, like fruit beginning to rot. The lantern ahead grew brighter, almost close enough to touch. He reached out, and it vanished in its place, a figure draped in white, face obscured by cloth. It stood still, no breath, no twitch, just waiting. He froze, spoke gently. The figure did not move. Then, very slowly, it raised one hand and pointed behind him. He turned another lantern, another figure, then another. Soon he was surrounded by them, dozens, none moving, all silent. And then, a sound. Not drums, not whispers. A melody. Soft, slow, and profoundly sad. It seemed to bloom from the fog itself, not sung, but remembered aloud. A woman's voice, layered with another, and another. A lullaby sung by the dead. The lyrics made no sense, just syllables folded into one another, like language unraveling in reverse. The figures around him began to sway, not walking, not dancing, just swaying, as if in mourning. He turned in a slow circle, breath shallow. The fog thickened further, the lights grew dim, and for a moment, he saw something else. A clearing briefly, just through the veil of mist. Stone steps, a ring of lanterns, set around a black pool. Figures gathered, a ritual. One figure stepped forward, a child. The others placed their hands on its shoulders. The child knelt. There was no sound, only the hush of ceremony. Too old for words. Then the pool rippled, and the child fell in, not splashing, not struggling, just gone. The fog surged and the vision broke. He was back among the figures again. The lights blinked, one by one, out of existence, until only one remained, a small lantern on the ground, just in front of him. Its flame was red. He knelt beside it. Inside, etched faintly into the glass. If you follow the lights, you find what you lost. If you follow the dark, it finds you. He looked up. The fog was gone. Just like that. Burned away without wind or sun. The jungle returned green, alive. Birds singing again. Leaves rustling softly. But the air held the chill of something that had watched him closely and let him go. He stood behind him, where the lantern had been. Only a smooth stone remained. On it, a handprint, smaller than his, still warm. And though the forest around him seemed bright again, his shadow was longer, too long, as if something had walked through him and stayed. By now, he had stopped trying to understand direction. The jungle was no longer a place he moved through. It was a presence that moved around him. Paths twisted where none had been. Clearings vanished when he turned to look. And sometimes he felt he had walked for hours only to arrive where he started. But this place, it was different. He knew it the moment he stepped into the light. Above him, the canopy towered higher than before. Impossibly tall, the trees rising like cathedral columns, their trunks silver green and wrapped in spiraling vines that shimmered like veins. The air here was thinner, cooler, and the light that filtered through the leaves held a faint golden hue, like sunlight strained through honey. And then, a voice. It came softly at first, not a whisper, a hum, long, slow, vibrating through the leaves. It didn't come from above or below. It came from within the air itself. A sound felt more than heard, brushing against the skin like the warmth of a hand that had not quite touched. He looked up, and the canopy looked back. The leaves shifted, not in breeze, but in pattern, as though rearranging themselves to watch him from above. Shadows moved across the forest floor in shapes not cast by any branch. He turned in slow circles, his breath quiet, trying to locate the source. The humming deepened, became words, but not in a language he recognized yet. He understood not because he knew the words, but because the trees wanted him to. You are not the first. The voice came from everywhere. Gentle, old, vast, double quotes. You are not the last. He whispered a question without realizing. What are you? The answer came like falling petals, memory, rooted in sky. We remember those who pass beneath. A breeze stirred, not cold, but laced with scent, pine, ash, and something like distant fire. Then the branches began to move, not swaying, unfolding. Above, a path revealed itself. Thick ropes of vine dropped slowly from the canopy, twisting together as they fell, braiding into a long, sinuous staircase of green and gold. It didn't descend. It invited. He placed one hand on the vine. Warm, alive, the stairs pulsed gently, once, as if acknowledging his touch. He climbed. Each step felt weightless, not like walking upward, more like drifting through dreams. The air grew clearer the higher he rose. The sounds of the jungle below dimmed, replaced by something stranger. Whispers caught in the rustle of leaves. Laughter tangled in the breeze, the soft murmur of lullabies that no longer belonged to any living voice. And then, he reached the top. A platform, woven entirely from living branches and vines, stretching in all directions, suspended in the high canopy. He stood in the middle, breath shallow. The world below was gone, only sky and leaves, and voices. Countless surrounding him, like a choir made of memory. The platform pulsed beneath his feet, and then in the center, a shape began to form. Leaves folding outward, vines twisting upward, until a figure emerged. Tall, robe-like body of moss and bark. Face made of polished wood, with two hollow eyes glowing faintly from within. It tilted its head, and then it spoke. But the voice came not from its mouth, it came from within his mind. You carry the echoes. He nodded slowly, unable to speak. The jungle gives, and it takes. What it takes, it does not forget. What it gives, it will one day reclaim. The figure stepped closer. Its feet made no sound. You've heard the river's grief, felt the drums, seen the tree's wound. You are changing. His breath caught in his throat. He wanted to ask what that meant, but the words wouldn't come. Only a thought pressed gently into his skull. To leave the forest is not to escape it. It grows in you now. The canopy above trembled. Golden dust fell like snow, landing on his shoulders, clinging to his skin. And with it, memories not his own. Visions poured into him. A man running through rain, clutching a stone carved with names. A woman kneeling at the edge of a blood-sap pool, singing a song with no words. A child buried beneath roots that grew into lanterns. A boy who became a tree. Each vision came and went like lightning behind closed eyes. Each left something behind, and then the figure stepped back, raised a hand. The vines behind him split open, a path revealed, not upward, not downward, forward. The voice spoke one last time. Not all who wander here return, but those who do are never the same. He stepped onto the path. The branches curled softly around his feet, guiding him forward. The platform behind him unraveled, not destroyed, just returned to the trees, and as he walked, the voice whispered gently through the canopy, "We will remember your name, even when you no longer do." The forest led him downward, not in a fall, not even a slope, but a slow spiraling descent, like circling into the hollow of a breath long held. The trees here grew closer together. Their trunks no longer stood upright, but curved, bending inward, arching overhead, forming a living tunnel of bark and silence. Leaves no longer rustled. Light no longer filtered. He passed beneath their arches, as if entering a sacred mouth, swallowed by stillness, and below his feet, the roots they did not tangle. They wove braided into spirals and folds, slick with dew, soft with moss, and as he stepped, they parted slightly, not crumbling, not breaking, but yielding, welcoming. He did not ask where he was going. The answer was already inside him. He was being taken to the mirror. It was not a place of glass, not a lake, not a pool. The mirror lay beneath the forest, deep hidden, buried in a vault of root and shadow. It remembered all who had come, and all who had been buried in forgetting. The tunnel opened slowly, widened into a vast chamber beneath the trees. The ceiling was low and arched with thick roots, and the air was so still it felt like stone. And there, In the center was the mirror, not shining, not clear. It was a basin, carved directly into the earth. Its surface was dark, not reflective, but absorbing. A black that shimmered faintly when the light, if there was any, moved across it. He knelt at the edge, peered into it, and saw not his face, but others not. Ghosts, not visions, memories his own. All of them laid bare, moments he thought forgotten, words he'd once spoken in anger. A look his father had given him the day he left. A girl at the edge of a lake, crying without sound. A birthday cake never cut. They passed across the surface, not as pictures, but as feelings. Each memory touched him, like a hand from beneath the water, tugging gently. And then he saw himself. Not now, not here, but elsewhere. Standing in a room he hadn't thought about in years. One window, dust in the light, books stacked too high, a radio whispering, static. He was younger, lonelier, speaking aloud to no one. The words came back now. I want to disappear, but I want someone to find me. Is that allowed? He flinched. The mirror heard it, and answered. The black surface rippled once wide, soft, and in it appeared a forest. Not this one, a memory of one, smaller, simpler. One he had drawn once, as a child, crayon trees, a blue river, a red bird in the sky. The mirror had kept it not as a picture, as a truth it was showing him. Something deeper than memory. It was showing him who he had been before. The world told him to be anything else. The roots around the chamber pulsed once, in time with his breath. And the voice came, not spoken aloud, not even inside him, just with him. This is not a place of punishment. This is a place of remembering. He closed his eyes, and the mirror spoke again, not in words, but in sensation. The feeling of dirt under fingernails, rain soaking through the spine of an old book, a hand letting go, silence after goodbye, a name said once and never again. He knelt lower, placing both hands to the rim of the basin, and whispered, I don't know who I am anymore. The mirror did not answer. It reflected, and what he saw now was not memory. It was possibility. He saw himself returning, but not to the life he had known, to something else, not braver, not wiser, just aware. Aware of what he carried, of what the jungle had taken, and what it had given back. A shape formed in the center of the mirror, a circle within it. A heartbeat, faint, steady his, and something else layered atop it. Another rhythm, older, not threatening, just familiar. He touched the surface, and for a moment, everything fell away. No forest, no sound, just that rhythm. Two hearts, one. His one. The jungle's, and they beat together, for one breath, then another, and then release. He opened his eyes. The chamber was empty, the mirror was gone. The basin, dry, just cracked soil beneath him. But his hands were wet, not with blood, not with water, with memory, with truth. He rose slowly, turned to the tunnel. The roots curled away, and in their soft retreat, he heard the final whisper of the mirror. You are no longer who you were. You are becoming the forest. The jungle did not open like a doorway. It breathed, and when it exhaled, the trees parted, not with sound or ceremony, but with a gentle, patient grace, like old guardians stepping aside to allow something precious to pass. He emerged from the chamber of roots, changed in ways he could not name, not lighter, not cleansed, but realigned, as though his soul had been quietly rotated, degrees at a time, until it faced a direction he had never noticed before. The forest felt it too. It no longer loomed. It listened. The vines didn't cling to him now. They curled aside. The air was still thick, yes, but it no longer pressed down with mystery. Instead, it wrapped him in a hush of understanding, like walking through the breath of something ancient and watching. And ahead, a path, not one carved by feet, not a trail beaten into earth, but something subtler. The leaves tilted toward it. The trees leaned away from it. Even the light slanted softly along it, like dawn spread sideways. He stepped forward, and the path moved. With him, it did not guide him. It followed. He noticed it quickly, the realization that his movement was being echoed, matched, perhaps even anticipated. The path bent to his pace, widened with his breath, narrowed with his hesitation. It did not lead him, it walked him at first. He thought it might be illusion, that the forest had finally broken him into fragments, turning his thoughts to dream, but no, this was not madness. This was recognition. The jungle was no longer a place he was inside. It was inside him, and now it was walking itself home. Each step brought something new. Familiar places, now changed. A stream he had crossed days ago now flowed in reverse, carrying not water but fallen petals, their colors muted like memories in fading light. A tree he had touched once now bore a mark, a spiral etched into the bark, as if the forest had written down his presence like a name in a ledger. He passed a broken idol, once hidden, now upright. And whole. Time here had not passed linearly. It had looped, and the path moved with the rhythm of something deeper than time. It moved with him. Hours passed, or perhaps none. There was no hunger, no tiredness, just quiet, and then footsteps, not behind, not ahead. Beside he turned, saw nothing, but he felt them, a presence, keeping pace, silent, respectful, not threatening, not guiding, just there, a companion made of shadow. And memory he didn't speak, neither did it, but somehow they understood each other, and together they walked the returning path as they moved. The forest began to open. Gradually the canopy lifted, letting through soft light. Birdsong returned, faint and slow, not loud but tentative, like the birds, too, were adjusting to his presence. The trees thinned, the underbrush lightened, the air warmed, and suddenly the path ended. Not in a gate, not in a clearing, just ended. Like a story reaching its final word and choosing silence over punctuation. He stepped forward, found himself standing on the edge of something vast. A field, golden with tall grass. A sky stretched wide and soft, above beyond the trees. No more jungle, only horizon. He turned to look back. The forest was gone, not receding, simply no longer there, as if it had folded itself behind a veil and returned to its slumber. But the feeling remained inside him. He still heard the whisper of roots, still felt the drums, faint in his pulse, still smelled the fog in the corners of his breath. He touched his chest, and beneath the skin, something was different, not broken, not healed, grown. A seed of the forest, planted in silence, now beginning to bloom. He stood for a long while at the edge of the field, watching the wind move through the grass, and beside him, though unseen, The companion stayed a moment longer, then turned, and vanished back into the silence. He never saw its face, but he didn't need to. Some parts of the journey are meant to be walked in mystery, not solved, not explained, just felt, lived, carried. He took his first step into the light. The path did not follow. It didn't need to, because now it walked within him, and wherever he went, the jungle would remember not to call him back, but to listen for his echo, and whisper his name when the trees grew still. Night fell like silk. Not sudden, not loud, just a slow dimming of the world, as if someone were gently closing the sky's eyelids. He had crossed the edge of the jungle, stepped into openness, into wind, into stars. But now, in this final breath of dusk, he looked back, and though the trees were no longer visible, he knew they were there, waiting not for him, but with him. The jungle wasn't something he could leave behind, because it no longer lived on a map. It lived in his rhythm, in his silences, in the parts of himself that words could no longer touch. He laid down that night in a nest of grass just beyond the forest's breath. No fire, no light dot, just sky and the soft hush of leaves still stirring in his bones. The air was cool, but not cold. It wrapped him gently. Not like weather, but like memory. He let his eyes close, and then the jungle came back. Not in body, not in roots or vines, but in dream. It did not appear before him. It grew around him. The earth curled upward, the canopy descended like a curtain of stars, and he was once again in the heart of it. Except this time, it did not ask anything of him. It simply held him. The womb of the forest, warm, dark, dark, alive. He was not afraid. There was no longer any need for fear. He had passed through the hunger of the trees, the gaze of the drums, the swallowing of time, the mirror of roots, and now he was known fully. The forest no longer tested him. It remembered him, and memory, here, was love. It whispered around him like lullabies, sung to sleeping gods. He heard the voice of the river, slower now, content. He heard the fog, not hiding, but sighing. He heard the canopy humming, low and full, and then he heard the first voice, the one from long before, the one that had called him into the jungle to begin with. It came not from outside him, but from a place deeper. You came because something in you broke. Yes, and you returned, not fixed, but true. He nodded in sleep. Tears drifted sideways into the grass. Not of sorrow, of recognition. He had not come to escape the world. He had come to meet himself in the place. The world could not follow. The forest was never meant to trap him. It was meant to cradle him, to peel away everything that wasn't real, to teach him that transformation is not a THUNDRCLAP. It's a slow leaf turning. It's a vine curling around a name you've forgotten how to speak. It's silence, learning to hold your voice. And now, as he slept, the jungle placed something in his chest. A seed, a memory, a breath. He didn't know, but when he woke, the stars were still there. The grass was cool, and in the trees behind him, nothing moved. But he knew. He had become part of the story now, the kind told in wind, in moss, in soft footsteps between dreams. And if anyone asked him years from now, in a place far from green shadows and bone drums, what the forest had said, he would smile, and he would whisper, "It said my name." Not every story ends with answers. Some fade like mist, curling into the corners of your thoughts, returning in quiet hours, when the night is deepest and you are soft with sleep. And this one, this story of green shadows and whispering roots. It does not leave you, it follows. Not with footsteps, not with fear, but with memory. Because the jungle was never just a place. It was a threshold, a living, breathing truth. One that cannot be written in maps or marked by names it does not want to be conquered or understood. It only wants to be felt and remembered. You may think you've left it behind, that the trail has faded, the vines have sealed, the drums have stilled, but listen, when the world goes quiet, it breathes again, that rhythm soft as a heartbeat in your pillow, that hush like fog threading between your thoughts, that presence watching, but not with eyes. You carry the forest now, not in your hands. In your silence you carry the voices of lost villages, the mournful songs of unseen women drifting through trees, the red lanterns glowing in fog, the black pool where memory sleeps. You carry the becoming, and you'll feel it, in ways small and strange, a tree you can't look away from, a path that feels too familiar, the sensation of being watched, not with malice, but with recognition. You might dream of vines. You might hear drums just before waking. You might, one day, find your shadow walking in a direction you didn't choose, and you'll remember, not clearly, not with detail, but with something better: knowing that somewhere, the jungle still stands, still sings, still waits, not as a trap, but as a mirror. Because horror, real horror, is not just fear, it's remembrance and sleep horror. It lingers not to haunt you, but to help you feel the things you forgot how to carry: loss, longing, wonder, softness. You see, the stories we whisper in the dark, they are not always meant to scare. Sometimes they are meant to return you to yourself, bit by bit, leaf by leaf, breath by breath. So now, as your body softens and your breath begins to slow, remember this: the forest was always listening, and now it listens through you. Let the shadows cradle you. Let the drums quiet. Let the mist settle. And if a voice calls to you tonight, in sleep soft, low and familiar, do not fear it. It is only the forest saying your name.